Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to a new reaction. This is What Do the Shadow Crystals Make by Gold Pro, and this was suggested to me on my Discord server by We Are Deltarune guy, and yeah, again, like, that's one of those things, again, the fact that, Deltarune technically isn't complete leaves us with so many questions. Like, again, the eggs, the shadow crystals. And apparently, on top of all of that, we're only going to need, like, 5 of them. Because if you get Chapter 3s, when you go back to Castletown, Sham says you only need 2 more. So it's doing something. Like, just going back to collectibles, I can't remember where I saw, but I remember somebody kind of jokingly theorizing that the eggs we're collecting are actually going to be related to Temmie, and that Temmie's grade when the project is actually due is going to be reflected on by like how many eggs we collected throughout the entire game. And that would be really silly. But I mean, I can imagine a large number of people who could be potentially a little angry if such a thing were to come to pass, given especially when you have to get, the egg in Chapter 3 and all the potential symbolism that could mean. And again, like, the fact that you're only going to have 5 of them when we think there's going to be 7 chapters, that means there's not going to potentially be like a secret boss in Chapter 6 if there are, actually 7 chapters. Again, I still actually need to go back and replay Chapters 3 and 4 to get, the Shadow Crystal for Chapter 3. But at the same time, again, like, especially in Chapter 3, Chapter 3's route is like a lot of weird stuff goes on with Chapter 3. I mean, getting the egg in Chapter 3 is really weird and convoluted compared to like the previous chapters. The secret boss in Chapter 3 technically isn't a secret boss. And the Shadow Mantle, it was so much build up to the Shadow Mantle over like all the years we had to wait for Chapter 3 and 4. And you can technically beat the knight or get the Shadow Crystal from the knight without even getting the mantle in the first place. Again, like, I remember, again, like, the whole thing Toby was talking about, Chapter 3 being more gimmicky. And again, I love Chapter 3, but it is definitely a much different experience than all the other chapters. But yeah, let's actually get into this video then. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because almost 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Deltarune video, and boy do I have a theory for you guys today. In my last Deltarune video, I talked about soul colors, secret bosses, and shadow crystals, mostly in the context of Chapter 5. Mostly, I tried to make sense of the last remaining shadow crystal, that of which absolutely perplexed me, seeing as I didn't expect the shadow crystal mission to be ending so soon. However, what I really failed to talk about was what exactly the shadow crystals were going to be used for. For a video topic so interested in continuing the search for the crystals, I didn't even talk about what we're gonna get out of it, which of course we'll likely be finding out by the end of Chapter 5. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. What exactly is Sham going to make with our 5 shadow crystals, and what does it mean? There is quite a lot to talk about here, so let's just get straight into it. Starting with, are we sure that there's only going to be 5 shadow crystals? A lot of you guys pointed out that upon handing Sham our 3rd shadow crystal, instead of telling us that the 5th crystal is the last one, they only say that upon the 5th one's collection, they'll have enough. Technically, this could imply that, and especially with the presence of 2 more soul colors, that you only need to obtain 5, not that there are only 5.
Oh, so yeah, 5 could be a minimum. Oh, that could also mean that whatever Sham makes, you could potentially get an improved version if you have 6 crystals instead of 5. That'd be cool. I mean, that still depends on what we're actually going to get.
It's a good thought, but I think it's very important to note that if you miss a single shadow crystal along the way, from Jevil, from Spamton, from the Knight, or from Gerson, Sham completely gives up on the mission. They don't say anything like, well, that's alright, just don't miss another, or keep collecting, I'm sure you can still collect enough. No, they just completely give up. Well then, forget it all. We all knew nothing would come of this. but it was fun to pretend it might for a little while. And even if you do get another after skipping one, they don't give you the unique Shadow Crystal dialogue from there on out. So from what I can tell, there seems to only be 5 Shadow Crystals possible to collect, as well as 5 mandatory Shadow Crystals if we want whatever Sham can do with them. So with Chapter 5 Secret Boss giving us our final Shadow Crystal, what exactly is Sham going to do with them? I mean, the item must be extraordinary. Sham judges it as such, with their scant descriptions of it being incredible, tough but worth it, and finally, something we'll quite enjoy.
I mean, at the same time, he did also build up the Shadow Mantle a lot and say that, you know, the secret boss of Chapter 3 would be literally impossible to beat without it. And that turned out to be just empirically false. So maybe he's overselling it a little bit. Who knows? Hopefully that's not the case.
Obviously, it's also the end product of 5 chapters worth of fighting optional, secret, and of course, difficult super bosses, one of which sits upon the throne of Undertale difficulty. Now, these descriptors are very, and probably purposely vague, to the point where, with this alone, I don't think I could make an entire video on the topic. However, even if Sham doesn't reveal much about this mysterious item, Malleus is actually the one that gives us the best idea of what exactly we'll be receiving.
Wait,
Among
what?
these ordinary combinations, like double burgers and twin ribbons, there's a very unusual one that has an unobtainable item called the Pure Crystal. Now, obviously, the word crystal should set off all kinds of alarm bells, but it actually gets more telling than that. This item is currently unobtainable, but by data mining the game, it seems like it's not only a key item, like the Shadow Crystals, but it also has the flavor text, the Shadow Purified by the Cat. Okay, I mean, we've known this since even before chapters 3 and 4 came out. Just the little things about it, purified by a cat, once a shadow, key item, I mean, there it is. Seemingly, this is the product of the 5 Shadow Crystals.
Oh god, I'd completely forgotten about that. Purified by the cat. Yeah, I think that... Wait, wasn't that said in like a Half-Bred Chaos video? Man, I haven't watched a Half-Bred Chaos video in a long time. Oh, have they made anything new?
But that doesn't make it any less confusing. First of all, the item description is a bit weird. The Shadow Purified by the Cat. Surely, if this item is the combination of 5 Shadow Crystals, then you'd think it would read the Shadows Purified by the Cat, not singular Shadow.
I mean, at the same time, they are like shards, so maybe... Actually, maybe thinking about it. So, maybe Chapter 5, after we get the last Shadow Crystal, Sham puts them all together into like a single, you know, Shadow Crystal thing, but it's like corrupt or like not pure, and then maybe something we do in Chapter 6 is what makes it into, that purifies it.
But we know Sham needs all 5 to make one item. If they can make one pure crystal for each Shadow Crystal that we got, then they wouldn't ask for all 5 before making them. Of course, it depends on how you interpret the word shadow, which could very well refer to the massive shadow created by 5 crystals. This item description is also something that's only accessed by data mining the game, so for all we know, it might not be finished. But aside from...
Though, for all we know, Toby might pull a fast one on us, and when the item is actually implemented in the game for real, the description will change.
Flavor text, the item is still pretty weird. Assuming the Pure Crystal is the product of 5 Shadow Crystals, we can further conclude, based on Malleus's fuse information, then it will then be used to create the Twisted Sword, a weapon for Chris that does, 16 damage? 16 damage. That's the exact same amount as the Black Shard, isn't it? You're telling me that the prize for searching for and defeating 5 super bosses throughout 5 chapters, and the product of the most mysterious and interesting items in the game, is a weapon that does the exact same amount of damage as a weapon we get in Chapter 3?
I mean, to be fair, at the same time, it might have some sort of weird effect, but again, there's also the whole thing that you can only craft the, you know, the Twisted Sword with a thorn ring, which you can only get from an abandoned weird route.
That's ridiculous. We don't even have this item yet, and it's disappointing. Okay, whoa. Let's back up a second here. The Twisted Sword. This mysterious weapon's fuse recipe is assembled not just of the Pure Crystal, the speculated combination of 5 Shadow Crystals, but yet another one of the game's most interesting items, the Thorn Ring. The Thorn Ring is a weapon that you can only get in Chapter 2 if you engage fully or incompletely with the Weird Route, a path through the game that is not only ridiculously obscure, but is a way to play through the game that completely changes and perverts certain events. The prospect that the Pure Crystal's only use is to be combined with a Weird Route exclusive item takes the lackluster damage value of the weapon and boosts the ridiculousness even further, especially because the Shadow Crystals are not associated with the Weird Route in any way. Spamton Neo's fight not only gives you a Shadow Crystal outside of the Weird Route, but is completely different from the one we experience after Snowgrave. Sham also doesn't change any of their dialogue if you participate in the Weird Route. Finally, we know from talking to Malleus at the beginning of Chapter 4 that he hasn't fully completed the task of creating new fuse options for us. The absurdity of the Twisted Sword, and the fact that Malleus's fuse menu is not even complete, leads me to believe that there is going to be more than one combination that involves the Pure Crystal, the combination of our 5 Shadow Crystals. So what will they be? Well, I think we can actually answer this pretty soundly as well. The Twisted Sword, emerging as the first Pure Crystal combination, has given us the formula for the Pure Crystal combinations. Powerful weapon plus Pure Crystal equals even better weapon. We know almost for certain that Noelle's Thorn Ring is going to be her most powerful weapon. It not only gives 14 attack, the second highest damaging weapon in the game, but also 12 magic, adding up to 26 points of damage when using her ice spells. This amount of physical damage is similar not just to the Black Shard, but the Justice Axe as well, meaning that these two weapons are definitely going to be the best weapons for Chris and Susie. So following the Pure Crystal formula, and keeping in mind that there has to be more than one Pure Crystal combination other than just the Twisted Sword, I think we can expect there to be Pure Crystal combinations for the Black Shard and the Justice Axe. We also can easily expect Chapter 5 Secret Boss, in accordance with the trend of giving everyone a weapon, to give us a Scarf, completing the trifecta or superfecta of powerful weapons. I think it's really notable how both the Roaring Knight and Gerson have clearly given us weapons only, despite Javelin Spamton letting us choose between an armor or a weapon. The game seems to be setting us up to have all 4 weapons by the time we also coincidentally have the 5 Shadow Crystals.
If you do the Weird Route, or, participate in it at the very least.
It makes sense then why these weapons come packaged with the Shadow Crystal quest, and not just the crystals themselves. Even the Thorn Ring, though we don't exactly get it from Spamton Neo, is given to us by the same character, and the Weird Route also forces us to get the crystal at the same time. So this leaves us with 4 Pure Crystal combinations. The Twisted Sword, exclusive to the Weird Route, a super weapon for Chris in combination with the Black Shard, one for Susie in combination with the Justice Axe, and finally one for Rouse in combination with Chapter 5 Secret Scarf. But then why does only one of the Pure Crystal recipes appear in Malleus's fuse options, and not all 4 of them?
It could very well, just be a thing that, Toby hasn't implemented it yet. If following this train of thought, given that we've already passed the chapter where you can get the Thorn Ring, maybe this, recipe is now visible because you've passed the point where you can obtain the Thorn Ring, and the other recipes won't appear until after the point where you've been able to get the corresponding, item to make the super weapon. Which, again, thinking about it, the whole thing, the Twisted Blade. The thing is with the Twisted Blade, or just swords in general, is that Noelle is the other character who can equip swords. She's not just limited to, the magic rings and stuff like that. So the Twisted Blade might be Noelle's super weapon that, realistically, you're only supposed to be able to get if you go through a Weird Route.
Well, I think it makes sense that in order for any fuse recipe to appear, it needs to have been able to acquire at least one of the ingredients in the previous chapter. We are able to get the Thorn Ring, Noelle's most powerful weapon, in Chapter 2, which means that Malleus could discover the Pure Crystal combination. The other 3 aren't there because at this point we only have the Devil's Knife and the Puppet Scarf, but the Justice Axe would replace the Devil's Knife, the Black Shard would be Chris's first powerful weapon, and Chapter 5 Secret Scarf will replace the Puppet Scarf. Not to mention that if you decided to play friendly with both Jevil and Spamton, you'd get an armor piece instead of a weapon. You might say, well, we get the Black Shard from the Roaring Knight at the end of Chapter 3, yet when we check in on Malleus's fuse options, there isn't a second Pure Crystal combination.
Right, yeah.
This too can be explained by Malleus's sudden illness and hunger for bread that is rendering him incapable of creating new fuse options.
Yeah, his gluten intolerance. Oh, God. Curse you, gluten allergies! You ruin everything!
It's not that there aren't any new ones. Heck, there probably are given all of the new items we get in Chapter 3. It's that he is literally incapable of showing them to us, which leads me further to believe that there are more pure crystal combinations left to be revealed, in the form of weapon upgrades for every possible party member. But wait, hold on. Every party member? The Twisted Sword, even though it's created with Noelle's weapon, the Thorn Ring, is very obviously a sword,
Yeah.
which is Chris's signature weapon. Every member clearly has their own class of weapon: blades for Chris, axes for Susie, scarves for Alce, and rings for Noelle. If what I'm saying is true, then the Thorn Ring's pure crystal combination should create a ring, not a sword. Well, let me remind you guys about something. In Chapter 4, we're shown the pieces of Deltarune's prophecy that foresee the three heroes of the story.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the piece that is supposed to belong to Susie could very well be attributed to more than one girl, Susie or Noelle. After all, both of them will find love, coincidentally, in each other, and there's several other clues, like the third Lightner triangle on the Deltarune door in Chapter 3, that suggest that Noelle might have been the second hero of the story. This mix-up can find its roots all the way back in Chapter 1, when Noelle, who was about to accompany Chris to the closet, which we know is the place we meet the prince, was interrupted by Susie barging her way into the classroom and being unwillingly forced into Noelle's position. But
Again, I've said it all before. The idea that, Susie isn't actually the girl from the prophecy. Not that she's not the intended hero. She's literally just not in the prophecy. Again, I pointed out, the fact that, Susie's able to break the rules so often, partially because she may not be, restricted by them in the first place.
there's a detail about this piece of the prophecy that I haven't heard many people talk about. Have you noticed it yet?
The
girl
dress.
doesn't hold an axe, nor does she wear a ring. She holds, without any doubt, a sword. The destined girl of Deltarune was supposed to equip a sword. It's right here in front of our eyes. Sure, this design detail could have just been done to plant some doubt to whether or not Susie was supposed to be the destined girl of the story, but then why wouldn't they have just left the silhouette of the girl without any weapon? After all, Chris's drawing, as well as Rousey's, don't include their weapon types in any way.
Again, I've said it before, and actually thinking about it, it could be potentially, pointed out that it's not in canon since you can't do it in-game. But if you break, if you do save editing to have, Noelle in your party later on, you can equip swords on her.
So what if the Twisted Sword, which is crafted from Noelle's most powerful weapon, a weapon that can only be obtained in a route that is forcing Noelle into the story despite Susie's accidental capture of the spotlight, is a weapon that can be used by both Chris or, as it's intended according to the prophecy, Noelle? We actually already know that Noelle is able to equip some swords.
Literally what I just said!
Possible in game, if Noelle is modded into the party, she's able to equip both the Jingle Blade and the Black Shard. Now, in the game files, the Twisted Sword is currently not one of the swords that Noelle can equip. However, I think that it's entirely possible, especially given that the Twisted Sword is not even supposed to be in the game yet, that Toby Fox purposely didn't code in Noelle's access to the Twisted Sword. Or it's only something that she's going to be able to equip in the weird route, and that flag has just not been coded in yet. If Noelle can equip the Twisted Sword, it would explain the weird correlation between the Black Shard and the Twisted Sword's damage. The Twisted Sword wouldn't be an upgrade for Chris, but it would be for Noelle, since the Thorn Ring only does 14 damage. It would also enable her to do a lot more physical damage outside of her magic, since she'll have an actual weapon instead of just a magic ring. It also fits perfectly that the Twisted Sword would be something that can only be equipped by Noelle during the weird route. If you abort the weird route after obtaining the Thorn Ring, you are actually able to keep the ring with you past Chapter 2, despite not progressing with the weird route. This means that even though the weird route will not have progressed enough for the Twisted Sword to be of any use, assuming Noelle will only be able to use it in such a route, Chris can still equip it if you decide to spend your precious Pure Crystal on it. According to the game files, the Twisted Sword inflicts the same Dark Slaying effect as the Black Shard, meaning that you can still use it to the same effect as whatever the Black Shard Pure Crystal combination is. So that is what I think the Shadow Crystals will make. 4 weapons, which you can only get one of per save file, that'll power up one of the 4 party members. It's actually really cool to think about, because it's at this point, after completing Chapter 5's Dark World, that you've been able to become fully acquainted with the 4 party members, both in character and their usefulness in battle. So now, using everything you've collected, it's up to you to decide which party member you want to bestow upon a very powerful weapon. This honestly could explain why there are 3 save files in the first place, not because of a pacifist route or a genocide route, but because there are some really important weapons that you can only get one of per save file.
God, I just thinking back, my whole theory that, we'd have some really obscure puzzle or something you'd have to solve based on what save file you were in. Oh god, that would. I mean, granted, I don't think that would be true, but that would be so funny if that was actually the case.
It also explains why Shadow Crystal progress is being tracked on the chapter select screen.
What?
Not just for one save file, but for all 3. All of this seems to be leading up to the idea that whatever these weapons are, and whatever these weapons do, it's going to be very important.
Wait, it tracks them for all save files? Really? I didn't notice that when I played. Oh, wait a second. I wonder. So, if you've ever played One Shot before, there's a version of there's an ending you can only get after like restarting the game and playing it a couple of times. What if the true ending, to Deltarune isn't? Maybe it requires like getting like 3 different Shadow Crystal like weapons, and the ending you get depends on which combination of 3 you actually choose. Oh god, I hope that's not the case. Oh no.
Perhaps even game-changing. The fact that you can only get one of these weapons per save file, and that the game is incentivizing you to try another in a different save file, is honestly making me wonder if certain parts of the game are going to become completely different depending on which one you choose. And remember that these are weapons, not armor, not some quest item, weapons. If I had to guess, I'd say that they're probably going to function in a similar way to the Shadow Mantle, in that they'll be virtually required in order to defeat some kind of super boss. I just wonder if that boss will actually be undefeatable without these weapons. But then we have to ask the question, if the 5 chapter long Shadow Crystal quest is ending in super powerful weapons, then what boss could they possibly be preparing us for? In my last Deltarune video, I talked about how chapter 5 secret boss might be the hardest in the series, but with this theory, it seems more likely that there's going to be something formidable in chapters 6 or 7 that will be the fearsome impossible super boss that I predicted would happen.
Yeah, the boss that you need the weapon to beat. Oh god, I don't even want to think about that.
So who is it? What is it? What will challenge the might of a pure crystal weapon, as well as the other 2 secret boss weapons? God, I wish I knew. I wish I could answer this question. You can take some shots in the dark, but unfortunately, I think it's going to be pretty much impossible to predict who this super boss is. It could be a Knight rematch, another Titan, Sans or Papyrus, Azrael, the Vessel, Gaster, Sham themselves.
Literally all of the above. There's like chapter 6 and 7 are going to be really weird where they take all those characters and throw them in a blender and just hit puree, and that's the boss. It's going to be like it's going to be a Shadow, Darkener, Lightener amalgamate. It's going to be so weird.
And we haven't even talked about the implications that this theory has on the weird route. If I am right that the Twisted Sword is a weapon destined for Noelle, then I wonder if the creation of it, which requires the collection of all 5 Shadow Crystals, will be required for the progression of the route. I think it's pretty safe to say that it will, especially keeping in mind that we're forced to fight Spamton Neo and take his Shadow Crystal in Chapter 2's Weird Route. You have to wonder then why the Twisted Sword will be so important to the Weird Route. Yes, it is a small upgrade for Noelle, as well as giving her a physical attack option. But aside from that, the weapon doesn't seem that extraordinary. It doesn't even increase her magic power like the Thorn Ring, which powered up Noelle's most deadly weapon, her ice spells. So we might as well talk about the last little undiscussed quirk of the Twisted Sword, if we're to further figure out what exactly the Twisted Sword is going to do for us in the Weird Route. What would that be? A lot of weapons and armor in this game give some kind of special ability outside of their magic, attack, or defense. Some are straight up useless, some actually do something, and some are really strange. The Thorn Ring, for one, had a special ability called Trance, which supposedly helped in getting Noelle to lose her mind enough to put Birdley in his grave. The Twisted Sword, inheriting the Thorn Ring's ability, gets this trance effect as well. But interestingly, while the Thorn Ring had an arrow pointing up, implying that it increases trance, the Twisted Sword has an arrow pointing down, implying that it decreases trance. Again, remember that the Twisted Sword is a Weird Route exclusive item. In that context, what exactly does relinquishing a trance mean? If the Twisted Sword can be given to Noelle, it doesn't really make sense that we would try to undo the trance that we've put Noelle in, since it seems like that's the entire point of the Weird Route. However, decreasing trance for Chris actually does make some kind of sense. Chris is literally in a control relinquishing trance while we possess them, meaning that under the influence of the Twisted Sword, they might start being able to take more and more control of themselves even with us inside of them.
So, what would the point of that be? I mean, think about it. I mean, actually think about it. I do remember, the whole theory that, there's a soul growing inside Noelle. So, and I saw a picture of, of that where, the soul was now in Noelle and Curse was just lying on the floor dead now that they didn't have a soul or anything controlling them. But if that was required, like, you transfer your soul in, you transfer the soul and the soul's control to Noelle instead of from Chris. Ooh, that could be weird. Ooh, okay.
But again, I don't really understand what this has to do with the Weird Root. If anything, it almost seems like the opposite of what the Weird Root is trying to do, which has involved making Chris say and do some things that they don't really want to do, because of our complete control over them. Giving them an item that gives them back some control seems counterintuitive. So honestly, I'm drawing a blank over what this ability does or what it means. Here's something to take away from this though. We know that the pure crystal recipes not only inherit the special abilities of the weapon used to create them, but seem to invert them in some way. We know that the Justice Axe, which I predict is the ingredient for Susie's pure crystal weapon, has a mysterious special ability, also described as a great magical power, that has yet to be explained. Some of you guys told me that this unknown ability was simply increasing Susie's heal spell, but that's actually not correct. Yes, Susie's heal spell gets better after the fight with Gerson, but it actually has nothing to do with the Justice Axe's magic power.
Oh,
The
okay.
3 question mark ability just does absolutely nothing as of chapter 4, and I still think we'll discover what exactly it does sometime in chapter 5.
Or, I mean, you never know. Maybe that's just it. Maybe if, the Justice Axe is using the crafting recipe and, its effect is inverted, maybe that's just it. Maybe its current effect, which does nothing, will be inverted into an effect that actually does something.
So given this, I think we can also expect Susie's pure crystal combination to completely invert whatever this ability does. The same would apply to whatever ability is on chapter 5 Secret Scarf, and perhaps the Black Shard as well. And inverting the Black Shard's ability is actually kind of scary to think about. What if Slay Dark, when combined with a pure crystal, becomes Slay Light? Oh god, that's actually really scary, assuming this implies that it might give us the power to destroy Lightners. I'm growing increasingly suspicious that there will be some kind of battle in the Light World at some point. This entire Light World stat page cannot exist for no reason. It even has our level, which is not connected to our level in the Dark World, and the amount of EXP needed for the next level. The Black Shard also is the only weapon so far to give us a lot of attack in the Light World, so the Black Shard's pure crystal combination might do even more.
Oh no. So, how the Light World, uses all the rules for, from Undertale essentially, and then it's the Dark World, it's something different. What if going down, like, what if, this whole thing potentially, getting the pure crystal into, like, the Black Shard and making a weapon that potentially could have, the ability to kill during the light. What if that enabled you to do, like, a genocide run in the Light World? Oh, that would be freaky. Oh no, I don't like the thought of that.
Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about in this video, and it's actually an entirely different theory that has to do with the shadow crystals that honestly could fit about as well as everything I just talked about and would make this theory completely wrong. And it all hinges on the single question: what if the cat mentioned in the flavor text of the pure crystal doesn't actually refer to Sham? There's a very interesting cat-themed character that has been popping up throughout chapters 2, 3, and 4. They're referred to in the game files as Friend, with pink and yellow eyes, a creepy grin, and of course, cat ears. This entity
like an
is
amalgamate.
distinctly different from the Pluie character we meet in the secret mic room at the end of chapter 4, despite their similar appearance, as well as all of the other pink and yellow-eyed characters. We haven't met them yet, but with them cropping up so much in the last 3 chapters, especially in important moments like in Rousey's Darker Than Dark cutscene, and as ads in the Mantle Holder boss, they seem to be pretty important. They could even be the secret boss of chapter 5, or at the very least someone that we're gonna meet in that Dark World. So given their importance and their distinct cat-like appearance,
I mean, again, like, with the potential for, like, a cowboy or Woody themed boss in chapter 5, Friend inside me. God, all the theories are all starting to melt together just like an amalgamate.
What if they're the one to give us the pure crystal? What if they had a shadow crystal but purified it for some reason? Remember earlier when I was questioning why the description of the pure crystal only seemed to allude to one shadow instead of multiple? Well, this could be the reason why. It would also mean that the 5th shadow crystal would instead be found in chapter 6, lining up nicely with the 2 remaining soul colors. But it does make us re-ask a lot of the questions that we've already answered with the first theory. Why is the twisted sword weird root only? Is there more than one pure crystal combination? And of course, this theory leaves us with absolutely no idea of what Sham is going to make with our 5 shadow crystals.
I mean, thinking about it, what if there's... Oh, wait, no, you give the shadow crystals to Sham. So, I mean, maybe afterwards, I mean, just spitballing here, maybe afterwards you get, like, the choice. You either, like, give all the shadow crystals to Sham for him to do whatever he's going to do with them, or you give the shadow crystals to Friend and he purifies them. So then you get more than one. So you can then get all the weapons. But then, wait, if that was like... Actually, wait a second. No, wait. No, because there's 5 shadow crystals and currently 4 weapons. Or theorized 4 weapons. So then that would leave 1 just not being used. Ah, okay, never mind. This is me. It is so hard.
And honestly, the idea that there's a second cat-themed character that has something to do with shadows crystals and turning shadow crystals into something seems like a bit of a stretch already.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with the main theory I presented with this video. You don't have to make too many stretches to make it work, while going down the Friend path seems like it might get a bit ridiculous. And that takes us to the end of this theory, at least as far as I've taken it for right now. There are some things in here that I find a bit less likely than others, but in terms of the main root of this theory, I'm actually really happy with it. And I think it does give us a special lens into the future of the game. We'll also be able to find out exactly how right I am as soon as Chapter 5 comes out next year. You know, assuming we find that Master of Bread that Malleus wants so badly in Chapter 5. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. These videos take a lot of time and effort to make, and a lot of my motivation comes from feedback from you guys. I'm already considering making a part 2 to this theory video, in which I go into a lot more detailed analysis concerning Noelle's reintroduction into the party in future chapters. So if you guys would like to see that, please let me know. But anyways, that's it for me. If you haven't already, go check out the other Deltarune video I've made following the release of Chapters 3 and 4.
Oh, God. Honestly, again, so... The shadow crystals, eggs... Man, one of each in each chapter. Deltarune has a lot of seemingly useless collectibles. Which, I mean... In any other game, that wouldn't be saying much, because usually a lot of games have, collectibles that you collect throughout the game to, like, 100% them. But, like, in Deltarune, it's just, they're so different. They have to mean something, because up to this point, there's been so much build-up. God, like, can you imagine, like, like, Sham is, like, building it up, and he gets, like, and he gives us, like, a really stupid item that's just gonna be completely useless. Oh, God, if that happens, like, again, the Deltarune community is rioting. I'm calling it here. Oh, God, but yeah, that's gonna be it for now. So, yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.